Yeah. Going down like this.
Yirra Yaakin have presented a lot of very good works and have had a history of producing, Indigenous theatre of the highest quality. And to me, that's magic. To me, the life of the theatre and the way that you can tell stories live on stage with live music and things like that, that's actually magic to me. I really believe that theatre has a way of engaging and getting to people, and that's the idea behind our season, is to re-engage our audience, to get people fired about Indigenous theatre, to get Indigenous people back to the theatre, and also to tell the stories that are relevant to us, and all and the magic that brings, and the idea of making people think and bringing people together and things like that. It's really important that we really establish this season as a way of reigniting the company, fueling the fire again, and really finding a way of just getting Yirra Yaakin back into a place of prominence, I suppose, in Perth theatre. It's where I feel the company deserves to be, and I come from a performance background, and I've performed for Yirra Yaakin ever since I was like 17, and companies like Buck and Gecko and Deck Chair and Black Swan and other theatre companies around town. But I've always Yirra Yaakin's had a special place in my heart, and I always really believe that Yirra Yaakin should be telling more Indigenous stories. Yirra Yaakin have had a history of doing workshops and introducing theatre, through playing and dancing and telling stories with kids. I believe that we can still give them the same enthusiasm, but let's just show them the highest quality that we can. Let's give them a show that they can be proud of and something that they can aspire to. That's what worked for me as a kid, was going to see theatre and really enjoying it and having something that's accessible to you, something that's relevant to you. And if you can do that of the highest quality and do it really murdish, then our audience will come back. And that's my plan, is to develop the Indigenous theatre audience back to what it was in the 90s. We want to share Indigenous stories, Indigenous culture, and even modern Indigenous themes and Indigenous ideals and things like that to the wider community, because I still think, even though it's been a long time since really reconciliation has been touted around, and it's also been a long time since colonisation, but I still don't think we've really grown together that much. I still think that there's a whole different side of Indigenous of the Indigenous community and Noongar people these days that the wider community don't get, and vice versa. So I think as a way of bringing people together, I think having an understanding of what goes on in the Indigenous community might bring non-Indigenous people a better understanding of the Aboriginal community, and by encouraging Indigenous people to go and see more mainstream theatre, they might get an understanding of the wider community, which it all reconciliation and all of that sort of thing really comes together with an understanding. You've got to have an understanding of the person that you're trying to reconcile with. Otherwise, you're just pushing the proverbial uphill. I mean, I'm not absolutely inundated. I'm still looking for scripts that I can program, and scripts that I'd like to produce, or I'd like to be in our season that someone else can direct and things like that. So I'm not exactly inundated at the moment, but I'm still sifting through a lot of some of the old stories that have been around Yirra Yaakin for a few years, like Mother's Tongue, which is our next production coming up in September. We start rehearsals in August, so it'll be October, November, October, November. That's why I have marketing manager to tell me all these things. And that show is a script that was commissioned by Yirra Yaakin about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been around the company, but it just hasn't been given that production yet. And that's something that I really wanted to do straight up, was a contemporary Indigenous piece by an emerging Indigenous female who's writing stuff for Belvoir Street, STC, Neil Bidgery over in Melbourne, and she's got a real future. She's what, 32 or something, 31 or 32, and she's fantastic, Kamara. And just wanted to start working with her straight out in my first season, because she's got a big future, and I think the company has a big future as well. So we really want to look at the types of artists that are out there that really want to tell these stories, because we can really help. This is the set of Honey Spot, which is our production as a part of the Perth Winter Arts Festival. And this story in particular is such a nice story to have in the Winter Arts Festival, because it really is a show for all ages, because we were at a school a week ago on Friday, and the 5 and 6 year olds were engaged right up to the end, as well as the 11 and 12 year olds. Plus all the parents that were around, and all the community people. So I think it's a really good time for us to re-establish ourselves in the Winter Arts Festival, in the city of Perth, in the Perth theatre scene, while also telling a story about West Australia as a whole. It's not just a story about Indigenous people. It's not just a story about two dancers or kids or a forest environment. It's actually really accessible by a lot of people, and I think that's the kind of story and the kind of production that really goes well with the Winter Arts Festival, being a festival for everybody and a festival for families, and a really good time for people to come and get together and enjoy their city. Tristan Parr, our musical director and composer, actually did a fantastic job in keeping it really simple, because the didgeridoo is in C. So it was a challenge to Tristan to write, compose music around one key, and to be able to have music that flows and sounds that all come together, because it's very restricted, because the didgeridoo is in one key. It doesn't actually shift. So it was really a lot of fun, bringing those elements together. And at times the didgeridoo will play, and you don't know if it's the didgeridoo or the cello playing. You don't know which one is making that sound, because they're both in the same key and they're both producing that beautiful drone. So there's all these little moments between the sound and the cello and the didgeridoo that really allow us to blend the two cultures again. And I think Tristan Parr, as a composer and musical designer, nailed that absolutely perfectly for me.